A welder shall be requalified whenever which of the following occurs. So this question pertains to the essential variables that is needed to be accounted for in the welder performance qualification in API 1104. A. A change from vertical uphill to vertical downhill. B. Change of filler metal classification from Group 1 to Group 3. C. A change from one process to another. D. When all of the above change at the same time. E. All of the above. Now again, this question pertains to the variables that if changed, will require the welder to be requalified, which are called essential variables by the way. For the qualification of welders, you have to refer to Chapter 6 of API 1104. It now lists all the essential variables that if changed will require the welder to be requalified. So as stated here, a change from one welding process to another welding process, a change in the direction of welding from vertical up to vertical down or vice versa, change of filler metal, a change from one specified OD group to another, a change from rolled to fixed position, a change in welding position, change in the joint design, elimination of a backing strip or weld metal, welders who qualify by welding a full penetration groove branch connection with a fillet reinforcement, and a change in the passes with a single process when more than one process is used to complete the joint. So those are the essential variables that if changed will need the welder to be requalified for the welder qualification record. So as you can see there, all of the choices here change from vertical uphill to downhill, change of filler metal classification, change of one process to another, and all of these above change at the same time because it is indicated there that if any of these variables are changed, or so if that happens, if all of these variables change at the same time, is also applicable. So the answer here is letter E, all of the above. So if all of these variables change, the welder needs to be requalified for that specific welder performance qualification. The term that describes an acceptable flaw is A. Defect, B. Imperfection, C. Indication, D. Concavity, E. Ridge. So if you're not familiar with the welding terms, but I highly advise that you do, you can refer to the glossary of API 1104, which this item number belongs to that glossary, in which you can see all the definition of terms related to pipeline welding and among others, even general terms in welding. For the choices, defect is an unacceptable flaw or discontinuity. So here, or the defect is just a discontinuity that exceeded the allowable limits per code or standard. Indication is the response or evidence from a testing, particularly for an NDT. So it refers to the evidence that you saw in the results of the non-destructive test. Concavity is a type of welding imperfection or discontinuity. And the last choice, letter E, refers to I think it's not a welding term. So you can comment down below if you have already encountered this ridge in your field. That leaves us to the answer here, letter B, imperfection. So imperfection is similar to a discontinuity because a discontinuity may refer to an acceptable flaw, but a defect cannot be termed as an acceptable flaw because it reaches the exceeded limit of a discontinuity. Coated filler metals and fluxes are sensitive to A. Ambient humidity, B. Overheating, C. Hydrogen cracking, D. Inert gases, E. Active gases. Even if you do not look for the specific clause in API 1104, which is this one, storage and handling, if you know your concepts, you know that coated filler metals and fluxes have a prescribed storage and handling condition that must be followed. Once they are opened and exposed to atmosphere or the ambient conditions, they are at risk of accumulating moisture and thus needs to be baked or stored in the oven, again to prevent welding discontinuities when used. So if you look at this clause, filler metals and fluxes in open containers shall be protected from deterioration, and filler metals that are coated shall be protected from excessive changes in moisture. So from the choices, you can now discern that the answer here is letter A, ambient humidity. So the coated filler metals and fluxes are sensitive to ambient humidity. If you fail to do that, it can result to discontinuity or defects in the weld. Which of the following destructive or non-destructive testings may not be used? A. Visual inspection. B. Radiographic inspection. C. Trepanning. D. Penetrant testing. E. Bend specimens. So this question I remembered actually came out when I took the Part C of the CWI exam because I have chosen API 1104. Out of these choices, trepanning is not used anymore as it is an outdated type of NDT, as you can see here. Trepanning methods of testing shall not be used. So the answer here is letter C, trepanning. So it is an outdated method of destructive or non-destructive testing, but I actually by researching I saw that it's not a type of non-destructive testing because you have to drill a hole on the weld specimen, and so it has become outdated. So that's why it was not used or not prescribed in API 1104. Which of the following are acceptable means for welders to identify their work? A. Stenciling their identification symbol adjacent to the weld. B. Recording their identification symbol on a weld map. C. Writing their identification symbol adjacent to the weld using a permanent marker. D. Recording their identification on a traveler. E. Any of the above methods as prescribed by the owner or owner's representative. So as you can see, these choices they are sensible in marking for the welders to identify their work at site. So when I was working in a refinery or in an oil and gas industry, I have personally see this one prior choosing the radiographic test or the welds that will be used for radiographic testing. So they're stenciling their identification symbol adjacent to the weld. They're also identifying that corresponding symbol on a weld map prior submitting the test package, and also writing their identification symbol adjacent to the weld using a permanent marker. They're also doing that, and also on a traveler. So what does API 1104 say about this? So the identification of welds depend upon what is agreed upon by the owner or owner representative, whether or not that welder is under contract by another entity or in-house. So as you can see here in clause 7.9, each welder shall identify the welder's work in the manner agreed by the company. So this may be referred to in the job specifications or contract if the welder is outsourced, or in the quality assurance plan if the company or the welder is in-house. So the answer here is letter E. Any of the above methods will work as long as the owner or the owner representative approves of it. When preparing a tensile specimen for testing, letter A, notch approximately 1/8 shall be cut into each weld. B, the specimen must be machined. C, may be oxygen cut with no further preparation provided sides are parallel and smooth. D, welding reinforcement may be removed. E, both C and D. Chapter 5 of API 1104 discusses the qualification of welding procedures. That's why the tensile strength preparation is in this section. As you can see in Note 1 and Note 2, the specimen may be cut using any method. In the choices, it is stated that the specimen will be cut using oxygen cutting. Clearly, here in API 1104, it does not restrict the method of cutting. So this Note 1 is correct. Note 2 corresponds to letter D of the question, indicating that the weld reinforcement may be removed. So the answer here is letter E. Both C and D are the correct answer. Next question. AWS specification A5.1 and A5.5 are used for welding: A, using the SMAW process. B, pipe in 2G position only. C, root pass welding only. D, electrode groups in 1, 2, 3. E, both C and D. So unless you memorize the AWS classification of filler metals, you will need this table to answer the question. Filler metal groups for welder qualification. Chapter 4 of the standard refers the specification of equipment and materials for welding. It is rightfully so that the filler metal groups are indicated in this table or in this chapter. Now, it does not matter if this is for weld qualification or for welder performance qualification, the AWS specification remains the same. So from the choices, the answer is letter A. The specification pertains to SMAW as you can see in this row of the table. A5.1 or A5.5 refers to SMAW. So the answer here is letter A, using the SMAW process. For welder qualification on pipe greater than 4.5 inch in diameter, but less than or equal to 12 3/4 inch diameter with thickness less than 0.5 inch, the number of destructive test specimens required are A4, B6, C same as procedure qualification, D16, E depends on the wall thickness of the pipe. In the part C of the exam, it is important that you mark with stickies all the tables and standards so you can easily locate them. In this question, it is being asked the number of destructive tests needed for the welder qualification test. You'll just need to locate the size in this table like so. So, in this question, it is being asked the number of specimen required for 4.5 inch to 12.75 inch under 0.5 inch wall thickness. So this will be the governing row. Not this one, because the wall thickness in this one is greater than 0.5 of an inch. So the number of nick break test and root bend test is 2 for nick break test and 2 for root bend test. So the total required number of tests needed for this specimen is 4. Hence, the answer here is letter A. Hence, the answer here is letter A, 4. The number of test specimen needed for this size and wall thickness of pipe is 4. How many root bend specimen are required for 8-inch outside diameter pipe with wall thickness 12.7 mm according to data in table 3? A. None, B1, C2, D3, E4. Now this question explicitly stated the table number that is needed to be referred to, in this case, table 3. You just need to identify the diameter and thickness of the pipe with the required number of specimen for root bend test. So the outside diameter of 8-inch pipe falls under this category, from 4.5 inch to 12.75 inch. So the number of root bend specimen here is 2 because the wall thickness is 12.7 mm. Now the wall thickness qualifier here is inclusive of 0.5 inch or 12.7 mm. So the answer here is letter C. So the answer here is letter C. The number of root bend specimen for this pipe is, when pipe is welded above ground, the working clearance around the pipe should not be less than A. 450 mm, B. 400 mm, C. 300 mm, D. 350 mm, E. 250 mm. Chapter 7 refers to the design and preparation of a joint for production welding. Hence, these requirements for production welding like clearance is stated. The question asks the pipe welding above ground clearance. So here, when the pipe is welded above ground, the working clearance around the pipe at the weld should not be less than 16 inch, 400 mm. So the standard just ensures that proper weld is being done, especially for the tough positions like 6G, hence this clearance requirement. So the answer here is letter B. Who shall decide when weather conditions are suitable for welding? A. The project engineer, B. The company, C. The supervisor of welding, D. Contractor, E. Quality assurance head. So the decision ultimately falls on the company. In API 1104, the company shall decide if weather conditions are suitable for welding, as you can see here, under 7.5 weather conditions. In API 1104, the company is defined as the owner's company or agency in charge of construction, meaning the owner's engineer or its representative decides whether the weather conditions are suitable for welding. In actuality, if the construction is contracted out, the contractor may propose to continue or halt the welding operations under a certain weather condition with the approval of the owner's representative, as to not compromise the schedule of the project and the quality of welds. So in this question, the answer here is letter B, the company. Non-destructive testing personnel other than visual inspection personnel shall be qualified in accordance with which of the following? Letter A, ASNT SNT TC1A, B, ASME Section 5, B, ASTM 265E, D, ASNT ACCP, or letter E, A and D above. According to API 1104, Chapter 8, Inspection and Production of Welds, which the NDT personnel must be qualified. Under this clause, the NDT personnel must be qualified, and this is also where the acceptable indications are indicated, meaning under Chapter 8 of the API 1104. So here, in 8.4.1, NDT personnel shall be certified to level 1, 2, or 3 in accordance with ASNT SNT TC1A or ASNT ACCP. So, as you can see here, only level 2 or 3 personnel shall interpret the test results. So with that, the answer here is letter D. So A and D above. So this certification body will enable or qualify the non-destructive personnel in accordance to API 1104. For multiple qualification, a welder shall be required to perform, select 2. Letter A, make a butt weld in the fixed position. Letter B, prepare a full-sized branch-on pipe connection. Letter C, join pipes greater than 4.5 inch outside diameter. Letter D, both A and B. So for welder qualification, one shall refer to Chapter 6 of API 1104. So it basically discusses the qualification of welders for the production welds. So according to this one, multiple qualification using the same process or combination of processes and the same filler group or groups. As you can see here, 2 tests may be given in order. So for the first test, the welder shall make a butt weld in the fixed position with the axis of the pipe either horizontal or inclined. So according to this one, this clause. And for the other test, the welder shall lay out, fit, and weld a branch-on pipe connection, so this one, in which the specified diameter of the run and the branch pipes are equal. So according to the choices, so you can make a butt weld in the fixed position and prepare a full-size branch-on pipe connection. So in order for the welder to be qualified, shall be, or he or she must require to do this activities or pass this welding tests. So the answer here is letter D. So he or she needs to do this both tests in order to be qualified in accordance to API 1104, and of course pass the qualification or the acceptance criteria for those tests. Which non-destructive testing is specified in API 1104? A. Nick brake test. B. Bend test for butt welds only. C. Radiographic examination. D. Metallurgical evaluation. So even without browsing your API 1104, this question can be answered with the process of elimination. So letter A, Nick brake test and bend test are not NDTs. No, they're not the type of NDTs, but they are destructive tests. So metallurgical evaluation does not fall in either of those categories, NDT or destructive. So which leaves us to the answer here. Letter C, radiographic examination. Shielding gases used to shield the arc should never be A. An inert type gas, B. Gas mixture, C. Filled intermixed, D. Kept in containers in which they are supplied. So again, this question, I think you can answer this also by elimination. So shielding gas is an inert type gas. So it can have gas mixture. So basically you can have percentage carbon dioxide or percentage argon, basically argon CO2, etc. So there are just limitation for mixtures of these shielding gases. You just have to refer to ASME section 2 part C for that one. So kept in containers in which they are supplied, so you have to do that as well in order for you to not basically contaminate the shielding gases. So, or E, both A and B above, so that's the last choice. So if you would look at this API 1104 clause, so one must refer to the storage and handling condition of shielding gases, which is under 4.2.3.2. And these shielding gases must not be filled intermixed. I think it's already indicated explicitly right here. So gases shall not be filled intermixed in their containers. So the reason for that one is the purity of these shielding gases is well defined. Meaning the mixture percentage is well defined in the WPS or in the welding procedure specification. And if the welder fails to follow that, it might cause failure of the welds. So letter D is the one that you must do in order to keep the purity of the said shielding gas. So this is not the answer as well. So which leaves us to what API 1104 already stated is letter C, field intermixed. So you should never field intermix those shielding gases to preserve their purity. Which of the following is not specified as a requirement for visual weld inspection? Letter A, free from cracks. Letter B, inadequate penetration. C, free of burn through. D, filler wire produces less than 1/8 of an inch into inside of pipe. Letter E, neat appearance. The question refers to the acceptance criteria of welder performance, though the question did not explicitly stated that. So this falls under Chapter 6 of API 1104, qualification of welders under 6.4 visual examination, meaning this is the acceptance criteria for the welder qualification. So in any standard, of course, welds must be free of cracks. So as this is the only discontinuity that automatically disqualifies the weld, as I've said, in any standard that you will encounter. Inadequate penetration, as you can see here, and the work must have a neat, workmanlike appearance that is acceptable to the company. So that are the criteria that is needed for the welder to be qualified. So this clause, if you can read through this, so no burn through is also shall be allowed. No, so no burn through shall be allowed as the result of the welder qualification test. So this clause does not state that protrusion of the filler wire into the root gap is not acceptable. So the answer here is letter D. Filler wire produces less than 1/8 inch into inside of the pipe. So it doesn't say the protrusion of the filler wire into the root gap. The maximum length of a crater crack is letter A, 1/8 inch, B, 5 and 32 inch, C, no cracks are allowed, D, 1/2 of the width of the bead, letter E, crater in welds cannot crack. So as you can see here, this reinforces the previous question that any types of cracks are unacceptable. As you can see here, cracks of any size or location in the weld is not acceptable. Or the crack of any size or location in the weld is not a crater crack or star crack. So as you can see here, cracks shall be considered a defect should any of the following conditions exist. So the crack of any size or location in the weld is not a crater crack or star crack. And the crack is a crater crack or star crack with the length that exceeds 5 and 32 inch or 4 mm. So this answers the question. So the answer here is letter B, 5 and 32 inch. Pipe ends of the same thickness should not be offset by more than A, 1/16 of an inch, B, 1 and 32 inch, C, 1/8 inch, D, 1/4 inch, E, no offset is permitted. So this refers to the allowable offset of the root gap for the pipe ends. So this question pertains, as I've said, regarding the acceptable root opening of the pipes with same outside diameter and thickness. So according to Chapter 7, This chapter 7 pertains to the design of production welds. So rightfully so, the alignment and offset of the pipes are indicated here. So the offset at any location must not exceed 1/8 of an inch or 3 mm. At the root, meaning it doesn't need, or it must not exceed these dimensions, the largest offset at the root. It should be noted that hammering also should be kept at a minimum, and the use of hinge tacks are prohibited. So you might get this question also in the CWI Part C if you choose 1104. So the answer here is letter C. So the largest root gap allowed is 1/8 of an inch. What discontinuity is found between two adjacent beads or between a weld bead and the base metal that is not open to the surface? A. Internal concavity. B. Inadequate penetration of weld root. C. Hollowed bead. D. Incomplete fusion due to cold lap. Letter E. None of the above. If you're not familiar with the definition, I suggest you read up on the glossary of API 1104. It contains all of the definition of welding discontinuities. So from the choices, internal concavity is a root bead that is fused to and completely penetrates the pipe wall thickness along both sides of the bevel, but whose center is below the inside surface of the pipe wall. Inadequate penetration is the incomplete filling of the root. So hollowed bead from the choices is the other term for porosity that occurs at the root. So that gives you the answer here, letter D, an imperfection between two adjacent weld beads or weld metal and the base metal that is not open to the surface. So between the adjacent weld bead and the weld metal, so that is not occurring at the surface. So that is incomplete fusion or cold lap. Hence the answer here is letter D, incomplete fusion due to cold lap. A company may reject any weld that appears to meet the standards of acceptability if, in its opinion, letter A, inspection personnel are qualified by experience only. B, the depth of an imperfection may be detrimental to the weld. C, the weld was magnetic particle inspected. Letter D, the length of the discontinuity is close to exceeding the allowable. Letter E, the discontinuity is in the root of the weld. So this question pertains to the if the company may reject any weld that appears to meet the standards of acceptability, meaning maybe if it is borderline acceptable with the standard, or maybe it is near the limit of acceptability but may choose to accept or reject it. So the company still has the right to reject that weld. So in accordance to Chapter 9 of API 1104, so the non-destructive test methods are limited in the information that can be derived from the indications they produce. So non-destructive test produces or will result into indications that the company may reject if those imperfections that are found in that NDT result may result to a depth of an imperfection that may be detrimental to the weld. So this will fall upon the NDT personnel or the welding inspector that will accept this, accept or reject this discontinuity or defect if maybe the standard might be borderline on its acceptability, or it appears or apparently meets the standard of acceptability. So in the end, the company may reject that if that depth of imperfection is deemed detrimental to the weld.
For in-service welding, burn-through is unlikely if the pipe A is made of stainless steel, has a wall thickness greater than or equal to 0.25 inch or 6.4 mm, is pressurized to at least 15 psi or 103 kPa. Letter D is preheated prior to welding, or letter E is welded by a qualified welder. Now this question pertains to in-service welding of pipes, which is called upon in Annex B of API 1104. So as you can see, here is the Annex B or the normative references in API 1104 in-service welding. So this question is related more to the heat input of the weld and some concepts regarding the material characteristics of the weld. As you can see here, Annex B of API 1104 pertains to in-service welding. So by definition, in-service welding refers to welding of pressurized or flowing piping systems that contain crude, petroleum products, or fuel gases. So what are the instances where burn-through can happen? So it can happen when excessive penetration caused by the weld puddle is blown into the pipe or the fitting. So there are several factors that may affect this, such as the pipe material, thickness, and the welding heat input as well, as I've mentioned earlier. As you can see here in this fourth paragraph, burn-through is unlikely when installing an appurtenance if the wall thickness of the pipe is 0.25 inch or greater. Based from Annex B here, burn-through is unlikely to happen if the wall thickness of the pipe is greater than 0.25 inch and or provided that the electrode that is used is low hydrogen electrode type. The electrode types that are ending in 8, 5, and 6 digits. So from the choices, you can rule out letter A because it is made of stainless steel. So from the choices, you can also rule out letter A since stating the material only without information of the heat input and the pipe thickness cannot be a definitive answer. So here, you can rule that out. Letter C, pipes pressurized to at least 15 psi does not affect burn-through. So whatever the operating pressure of the pipe does not affect the welding discontinuity, that burn-through. So letter C here, preheating prior welding, preheating actually softens the pipe material or reduces its hardness. So in some ways, it can promote burn-through if preheating is not done properly. So letter E, welded by a qualified welder. So it doesn't matter if the welding these pipes must be done by qualified welder by passing the appropriate welder qualification tests. But it doesn't mean that burn-throughs will not happen in this situation. So, which leaves us to the answer here. If you done this by elimination, so that will leave us to this answer, letter B, as also referenced in Annex. As referenced also in Annex B of API 1104. For in-service welding, which of the following conditions are required for hydrogen cracking to occur? Letter A, crack-susceptible microstructure. Letter B, a weld discontinuity. Letter C, tensile stress acting on the weld. Letter D, all of the above. Letter E, only A and C above. So this question also refers to in-service welding. The answer can be found in Annex B, point 1, General. This is under the general clauses of API 1104 Annex B. So in this paragraph, as you can see, hydrogen cracking can occur when there is hydrogen in the weld, development of a crack-susceptible microstructure, this one, and tensile stress acting on the weld. So as you know, the presence of hydrogen in the weld is possible because of moisture, since water is composed of, or 2 hydrogen molecules, I should say, and one oxygen molecule. Crack-susceptible microstructure, it refers to those materials with coarse grain structure, more common on high hardness materials and non-heat treated materials, because it is more susceptible to hydrogen cracking or cracking in general if heat treatment methods are not properly implemented to those in those materials, and there is a tensile stress acting on the weld. So the last 2 points can be resolved with the use of heat treatment methods, is crack-susceptible microstructure and the tensile stress, because residual stresses can be relieved by PWHT or heat treatment. So that leaves us with the answer here. Letter E, only A and C above. So a crack-susceptible microstructure and tensile stress acting on the weld. So the weld discontinuity may or may not induce hydrogen cracking. So this is a very general statement. It will depend upon the discontinuity. The answer here is letter E. For welder qualifications of an in-service longitudinal seam weld-on pipe with a 12-inch or 300 mm outside diameter and a wall thickness of 1 inch or 25 mm, which test specimen are required? So letter A, 2 tensile, 2 nick break, 2 root bends, and 2 face bends. Letter B, 2 tensile, 2 nick break, and 4 side bends. Letter C, 4 nick break, 4 face bends, and 4 macros. Letter D, 1 tensile, 1 nick break, and 2 side bends. Letter E, 1 tensile, 1 nick break, 1 face bend, and 1 root bend. There are separate guidelines for qualifying welders for an in-service welding, which is referred to in section B.3 of Annex B here. Testing of welded joints. Similar to other welding qualifications, there are requirements to the number of test specimen for in-service welding given here in table B.5. Looking at this table, you can see the total number of test specimen depending on the sleeve wall thickness of the pipe. So here it depends upon this wall thickness. So looking at this table, the wall thickness is 1 inch. So this row should be the answer here. 1 tensile, 1 nick break, and 2 side bends. A total of 4 tests. So looking at the answer here, it should be. So looking at the choices, or looking at the table and based from the choices, the answer here is letter D. 1 tensile, 1 nick break, and 2 side bends. The answer here is letter D. For in-service welds, the carbon equivalent of the material to which the procedure applies should be identified. Which of the following elements is not used to determine the carbon equivalency? So carbon is important for in-service welds because it determines the hardness of the said material. So different materials have different carbon equivalents depending on its chemical composition. So you can find this in the mill certificates of those materials. So letter A, copper. Letter B, nickel. Letter C, silicon. Letter D, vanadium. Letter E, chromium. This question can be answered as well if you are familiar with the equivalent carbon formula, in which if you are taking the CW exam, you must be familiar as well. Don't worry, if you want to make sure as well, you can refer to the footnote of B2.2 welding procedure specification under the annex of in-service welding. It's a bit small here, but this is the formula for the carbon equivalent, where the elements that will be considered in calculating equivalent carbon are indicated. So based from this formula, silicon is not included. So we can now conclude from these choices that the answer here is letter C, silicon. Silicon is not used to determine the carbon equivalency. So it has different function for, I think, for deoxidizing the steel. It doesn't contribute much, or doesn't contribute to the carbon equivalent, and in general does not contribute to the hardness of the material. The company shall retain documentation of the qualification of welding inspectors, which shall include but are not necessarily be limited to A, results of any qualification examination, B, education and experience, C, training, D, all of the above, E, none of the above. So for the qualification of welding personnel, it can be found in 8.3 of API 1104. Documentation of these personnel is necessary because it's not only important for safekeeping and legal purposes, but to also track if the qualified welders needed to be retested as well. So I think there is an expiration, so to speak, of the qualification of these welders if they are not using this specific welding procedure, or welding, not welding procedure, but a specific welding process. For example, GTAW or FCAW, they're not using it for a couple of months or for a couple of years. They need to be retested. So they need to be retested as well because, for example, if they have produced unsatisfactory welds, or just to maintain or to have a proper tracking of these welders. So as you can see here, the documentation of this qualification shall be retained by the company, and the information included therein or herein should be the education and experience, training, and the results, more importantly, or most importantly, the results of any qualification examination. So by that clause, the answer here is letter D, all of the above. All of these results must be kept in accordance with the company policy, or should be retained in accordance to API 11.0. During qualification of an in-service for branch and longitudinal seam welds, when should the face bends be tested? A. As soon as possible after welding. B. Within 24 hours after welding. C. 24 hours or more after welding. D. No sooner than 48 hours after welding. E. While the weld is still warm. So the question here refers to when the specimen must be tested. And as stated here in the weld qualification of in-service welding, by the way, this question refers to the testing of welded joints done by in-service welding. The specimen must not be cut, machined, or tested destructively less than 24 hours after welding, as you can see here. So this gives the answer here as letter C. In this clause, there is no limitation as to when after 24 hours must the weld be tested. It just imposed a limitation that the weld must not be tested earlier than 24 hours. So the reason here is that the heat input during welding may still affect the mechanical properties of the weld metal. So the answer here is letter C. The qualification of in-service welds for branch and longitudinal seam welds must be tested 24 hours or more after welding, as specified in the aforementioned clause. In-service welds that contact the carrier pipe may be particularly susceptible to each of the following. Letter A, porosity. Letter B, tungsten inclusion. Letter C, cracking. Letter D, lack of fusion. Letter E, cold lap. So this question now pertains to the effect of in-service welds that are in contact with the carrier pipe. So these pipes are the ones transporting the liquids or gases. That's the definition of a carrier pipe, which you can see here. So though this note here specifically pertains to longitudinal weld, the answer can be referred here in this note. So the penetration of the longitudinal groove seam weld into the carrier pipe is undesirable since any crack that might develop is exposed to the hoop stress in the carrier pipe. So though the question refers to the longitudinal groove seam weld, the question here is if in-service welds are done to the carrier pipe, what is it susceptible to? So the answer here is very clear that it will be subjected to cracking. So this is the reason why penetration in the groove seam weld is not allowed for the carrier pipe without a backing strip, as also stated here. So this joint should be fitted with a mild steel backup strip or suitable tape to prevent penetration of the weld into the carrier pipe. So the answer here is letter C, cracking. A company may authorize weld cracks to be repaired provided the crack is less than blank of the weld length. Letter A, 8%. Letter B, 12.5%. Letter C, 1/6. Letter D, 5/32. Letter E, a company cannot authorize weld crack repairs. So this question can be referred to in the procedure on how to do crack repairs. In general, repair and removal of weld defects can be seen under Chapter 10 of API 11.04. As you can see in this clause 10.2.3, crack repairs. Cracks can be repaired if the length or aggregate length of more than one crack is greater than 8% of the weld length. The length of a crack is the longest dimension regardless of the orientation. As you can see in this clause 10.2.3, Part A, a weld with a crack defect as defined in this clause shall be cut out when the length of a crack, single crack, or the aggregate length of more than one crack is greater than 8% of the weld length. Meaning, if the crack is greater than 8% of the weld length, the weld shall be cut out. It shall not be repaired anymore. So the limitation here is 8% of the weld length. If the crack is less than 8% of the weld length, then it can be repaired. So based from the choices, since the question refers to if it is less than blank of the weld length, then so the answer in this question is letter A. Because if it is less than 8% of the weld length, then the company can authorize that the weld cracks can be repaired. Otherwise, if it is greater than 8%, then the weld shall be cut out already. Individual hollow bead discontinuity shall be considered a defect if two HB indication exceeding blank in length are separated by less than 2 inches or 50 mm. Letter A, 50 mm. Letter B, 25 mm. Letter C, 13 mm. Letter D, 6 mm. Letter E, not specified. API 1104 has sections of discontinuities and their criteria when they will be considered as a defect. This one is for hollow bead porosity. By the way, HB refers to hollow bead porosity. Since the problem stated that if two HB indications are separated by blank inches, will it be considered a defect? Letter C of this criteria mentions that the aggregate length of all indications of HB exceeds 8% of the weld length, meaning if this criteria is met, then it shall be considered as a defect now. So in this question, it was not specified the weld length in any shape or form. So the answer here is letter E. If you interpret the problem, you cannot see here the weld length. That should be the indication of that should be the criteria for basing the acceptable limit of the length of indication for these two hollow bead porosity. We cannot identify it since it was not given in the question. So the answer here is letter E. Which of the following changes would require procedure requalification if toughness tests are not required? Letter A, change in heat input more than 20%. Letter B, change from rolled to fixed welding position. Letter C, a change from one filler metal group to another. Letter D, any of the above. Letter E, only B and C above. Variables requiring procedure requalification pertains to the essential variables, meaning if these variables are changed, then you will need another qualification of the weld for that specific welding procedure specification. These variables can directly affect the mechanical properties of the weld in general. Table 1 of API 1104 here lists all these variables. As you can see here, it is stated here as essential variables. There are two categories here. The standard WPS refers to the procedure that will not require toughness test here. The standard WPS, it will not require toughness test. And this one, category 2, refers to the criteria in which toughness tests may be required. So you can check each of the choices here. So for the first one, the heat input here. This one, 5.4.2.8, letter C. So if toughness tests are not required, so meaning in this one, it is not marked here as an essential variable. So if that is the case, then this variable will not require requalification should the heat input changes. So if toughness tests are not required. So change from rolled position to fixed position, but not vice versa. So as you can see here, if toughness tests are not required, so it is also an essential variable. So since it was marked, then if this variable change, then you will need requalification. So the reason being here is that a fixed welding position is much more difficult than a rolled welding position. So if you change from rolled welding to fixed position, then it shall require a requalification. Also, changing the filler metal group here will also require requalification, since changing the filler metal will affect the mechanical properties of the weld. So based from the choices, the answer here is letter E, or these two variables here, if changed, will require a new procedure qualification record for that new WPS if these variables are changed. During radiographic testing, the film or other imaging media shall be interpreted by A. Level 1, B. Level 2 or 3, C. The contractor's representative, letter D. The radiographer, letter E. The quality control manager. So this question is pretty straightforward. As indicated here, only level 2 or 3 radiographers can interpret the images. In this case, not even a CWI can do this in accordance with API 1104. So the answer here is level 2 or 3 or letter B. The tensile strength of a butt weld zone for procedure qualification, including the fusion zone of each specimen. Letter A shall be greater than or equal to the specified minimum tensile strength of the pipe material. Letter B need not be greater than or equal to the actual tensile strength of the material. Letter C shall equal or exceed the actual tensile strength of the material. Letter D, A and B above. Letter E, A and C above. So the question here pertains to the acceptance criteria of the tensile strength of the weld zone, which is in Chapter 5 of API 1104. So Chapter 5 pertains to the qualification of welding procedures for this standard. Based from this clause, the tensile strength of the weld must be greater than or equal the minimum tensile strength, as you can see here, but need not be greater than or equal to the actual tensile strength of the material. So what's the difference? So the actual tensile strength of the material can be referred to in the mill certificate of that material that was based on the actual tensile strength values that was gathered during the testing. But the minimum tensile strength can be seen depending upon the material. For example, for ASTM materials, there are specified minimum tensile strength limits for those materials. So you can refer to that as well. So the answer here must be letter D, A and B above. So the tensile strength material shall be greater than or equal to the specified minimum tensile strength of the pipe material, but need not be greater than the actual tensile strength. Which of the following shall be stored in a clean, dry place where the conditions will not detrimentally affect the emulsion? Letter A, imaging media. Letter B, magnetic particle testing powder. Letter C, coolant. Letter D, welding electrodes. Letter E, unexposed films. So from the question, you can, I think, deduce that the problem is referring to a non-destructive testing guideline. So here, in Chapter 11 of API 1104, which is the procedures for non-destructive testing, so you can see here, for storage of film and other media, the exact clause here was asked in the question: all unexposed films shall be stored in a clean, dry place where the conditions will not detrimentally affect the emulsion. So that gives you the answer here, letter E, for the unexposed films. So unexposed films must be stored in a clean, dry place, since these sheets, if left unexposed, can show fog, as you can see here in the standard, and will need to be discarded. So these welding inspectors, I think, know this. If these sheets are left exposed, can lead to detrimental effects or can degrade the quality of the films. So the answer here is letter E. Which welding process is specifically mentioned for use with this code, API 1104? So A, gas tungsten arc. B, submerged arc. C, oxyacetylene. D, gas metal arc. E, all of the above. So if you're taking the CW exam and you choose API 1104, if they didn't mention what code, you can obviously deduce that it is for API 1104 in this case. So if the question is pertaining to a specific scope or a specific welding process that was covered or that is covered by the standard, then you can look into the scope of that standard. So it asks what welding process is covered by the API 1104 standard. As you can see here, it enumerated all of the welding processes here. The welding may be done by SMAW, SAW, GTAW, GMAW, flux processes using manual, semi-automatic, or mechanized welding processes. So if you can compare it with the choices, so gas tungsten arc, submerged arc, oxyacetylene was also mentioned, and gas metal arc. So the answer here is all of the above, letter E. The process where the pipe remains stationary during welding is called letter A, automatic welding, letter B, position welding, letter C, roll welding, letter D, root bead welding, or letter E, semi-automatic welding. The question can be answered by looking into the glossary of API 1104, which is in chapter 3. So I highly advise you to become familiar with the welding terms, but if you want to make sure, you can always look back into the glossary, but it will save you time if you are familiar with the common welding terms. So the answer here is letter B, position welding. So roll welding is the opposite of position welding, where the pipe is being rolled while the welding is being done. So automatic and semi-automatic welding refers to SAW process or GMAW process respectively. So automatic welding is for SAW and semi-automatic is for GMAW, because of the wire feed and the other parameters that are automatically can be controlled by the machine. So the answer here is letter B. API 1104 applies to pipe welding that conforms to which specifications? Letter A, AWS 5.28. Letter B, BSI BS 7448. Letter C, API specification 5L. Letter D, applicable ASTM. Letter E, both C and D. This question, it is being asked, what standards does API 1104 conforms to? Remember, every standard has this like normative references like this, wherein it is referring to other standards as well, as you can see here, listed here. Now, in API 1104, some of those standards are referred to in the material section, which is in 4.2, wherein API 1104 refers to the pipes and piping components that are being referred to in the standard. So those standards are API specifications, ASME international specs, ASTM international specs, some of MSS specifications, and ANSI specifications as well. In the normative reference, as you can see here, it was very specific that API spec 5L, specification for line pipes, is also referred to. As you can see here, both in the normative references and the material references, BSI and AWS 5.28 was not referred to. By the way, BSI is a British standard which specifically in this set of choices refers to fracture mechanics toughness test. And as you can see in those referred standards, this BSI and AWS 5.28 is not referred to. But applicable ASTM standards and API 5L are both referred. So the answer here is letter E, both C and D. Once opened, where shall SMAW filler metals ending with numbers 5, 6, 8 be stored? Letter A, in ambient air. Letter B, electrode oven. Letter C, shipping container. Letter D, old refrigerator with 200-watt light bulb. Letter E, special plastic bags. If you can remember, electrodes named ending in 5, 6, and 8 are low hydrogen electrodes. If you know the concepts, even without skimming API 1104, you know that these electrodes do not want exposure with moisture. Also, if you can refer to 4.2.2.2, storage and handling, this specifically refers to filler metals. So it is stated here that the filler metal shall be coated and shall be protected from excessive changes in moisture. Hence, most of these electrodes are prescribed to be stored in elevated temperatures so as not to accumulate this moisture. If you see this clause, you have a clue that filler metals in general must be protected from this aforementioned moisture. Thus, the most logical answer here is letter B. Since the elevated temperatures that these SMAW filler metals that must be stored to can only be given by an oven. So the other choices, especially letter A, is not okay since it is in ambient air. It will promote moisture. Shipping container does not contain any heat source that will maintain the temperatures of these SMAW filler metals. The 200 watt light bulb does not have enough energy source to do this, and special plastic bags are similar to ambient air. So the answer here is letter B. Letter A, gas welding of butt weld metals. Letter B, arc welding of fillet and socket welds. Letter C, welding carbon and low alloy steels. Letter D, welding petroleum pipelines. Or letter E, all of the above. This type of question is already screaming to look into the scope of the standard, which is in chapter 1. As you can see here, 1104 covers both gas and arc welding and welding of carbon and low alloy steel pipes and welding of the transmission lines of crude petroleum products. So as you can see here, every word of that scope is mentioned in these choices. So the answer here is all of the above, letter E. Which of the following applies to an ESI? Letter A, non-metallic solid trapped in the weld metal. Letter B, broken slag lines. Letter C, an indication usually found at the fusion zone. Letter D, wagon tracks. Letter E, all of the above. Discontinuities are listed in API 1104, Chapter 9, Acceptance Standards of NDT. Specifically in 9.3.8, slag inclusions are being discussed. Also, if you deem Chapter 9 is not enough, since, as you can see here, the question characterized every characteristics possible for the ESI. So you have plenty of possible answers here, and all of the above is also is also in the choices. So it is a possibility that every one of these choices are the answer. So if you deem that chapter 9 is not enough, you can always look into the chapter 3 or the glossary of API 1104, in which most, if not all, of the discontinuities are being discussed or being defined. The question is looking for the characteristics, and as you can see, ESIs are characterized by non-metallic solid and trapped in the weld metal, broken slag lines, or wagon tracks that are found in the fusion zones. So if you go back to the choices, every single bit of this one are being mentioned in the standard. So the answer here is letter E, all of the above. Repaired weld shall be considered acceptable if letter A, it meets the standards of acceptability of section 9. Letter B, examined by the company representative. Letter C, be submitted for radiographic inspection. Letter D, ground smooth with a minimum of metal removal. Letter E, be re-inspected by a level 3 inspector. This question is kind of vague, and you need to be careful in looking for the clause. This is one of those questions that you really need to refer to the standard. Also remember that questions pertaining to weld repair, you need to refer to chapter 10 of the API 1104. So it is stated here that any repair must meet the criteria of section 9 here. So it is already indicated in chapter 10 that the repair weld criteria must meet the acceptance criteria specified in section 9. I also want to point out here this repair requirements and company authorization requirements, because this, admittedly, I get confused as well during the examination. I always look into this one. So this question does not refer to this company authorization requirements. So this particular clause refers to when does a repair need company authorization. So I just want to point that out. So the choices here, be examined by the company representative. So it is not enough of an answer for you to conclude that the repaired welds is acceptable. So be submitted for radiographic inspection. So submitting the X-rays or the radiographic films does not equate that the repaired weld is acceptable. You must have to have the acceptance criteria, which was referred here in section 9. Ground smooth with a minimum of metal removal. So some weld repairs does not automatically mean that you have to remove the metal. It's a case-to-case basis. And letter E, this does not equate to being acceptable because a level 3 inspector might deem that the repair welds is also a failure or it failed. Actually, by looking into the question itself or the choices, the most logical answer here is that it must meet the standard of acceptability, which is section 9 of API 1104, which is the answer here.
Individual or scattered porosity shall be considered a defect when A. Size of an individual pore is less than 1.5 millimeters in diameter. B. Distribution of scattered porosity exceeds the concentration specified in Figure 20 or 21 of API 1104. C. Size of an individual pore exceeds 25% of the thinner of the two specified wall thickness joined, but no more than 3 mm in diameter. Letter D, B and C. Letter E, all of the above. The acceptance criteria of various discontinuities is outlined in Chapter 9 of API 1104. The question is asking what are the conditions that will make individual or scattered porosity a defect. It's this one. As you can see, letter B and C matches the description in these clauses, but the size of the individual pore here in the choices is lesser than the threshold of 3 mm in diameter. Hence, this will be considered acceptable and not a defect, since in the choices, the size of an individual pore is less than 1.5 mm in diameter. The limit here is 3 mm. Both letter B and C of these clauses, the size of an individual pore exceeds 25% of the inner thickness, and the distribution of scattered porosity exceeds the orientation permitted by Figure 20 or 21, matches these conditions. So, it will be considered a defect if letter B and C are exceeded. So, the answer here is letter D, since letter A did not exceed the 1.5 mm or did not exceed the 1.5 mm did not exceed the limit of 3 mm size of the individual pore diameter for it to be considered an individual porosity defect. So the answer here is letter D. If a pipe is sized 33.4 mm outside diameter, what is considered a defect below for slag inclusion? Letter A, length of an ESI indication exceeds 3 times the thinner of the specified wall thickness joined. Letter B, width of an ESI indication exceeds 1.6 mm. Letter C, aggregate length of ESI and ISI indication is 8% of the weld length maximum. Letter D, A and B. Letter E, none of the above. So, here, for the question, the pipe is specified to be below the 60.3 mm threshold that is being specified here in this clause. So there are a classification for the slag inclusions depending upon the pipe diameter, which is in this case you have to identify first if it falls under this classification, which is below 60.3 mm, and the other I think is above this size. So as you can see in the as you have seen in the choices, so the length of an ESI indication exceeds 3 times the diameter of the specified wall thickness joint. So it passed this, I think is letter A. Yeah, that one. And the width of an ESI indication exceeds 1.6 mm. So this is letter B. And letter C, the aggregate length of ESI and ISI indications is 8% of the weld length maximum. So if you can see this clause, letter E, so it doesn't state that the weld length should be at 8% maximum, meaning anything below that will lead for both ESI and ISI to become a defect. So it should be that the ESI and ISI indications should exceed or shall exceed. There's a difference between should and shall here. So it shall exceed 8% of the weld length. So so this is very problematic here because it states that it should be 8% maximum. So anything below that should be an indication, or any size below that 8% of the weld length should be considered a defect. So the answer here is letter D. Both A and B can be considered a defect for slagging. Incomplete fusion is considered acceptable in a 168.3 mm OD pipe if letter A, length of an individual indication of incomplete fusion is 10 mm. Letter B, aggregate length of indication is 15 mm if the pipe is fully welded. Letter C, there are two indications, 30 mm and 50 mm. There are two indications, 30 mm and 15 mm if the pipe is fully welded. Letter D, none of the above. Letter E, A and B. So so the question indicates fully welded. So this statement will come in handy later on because it indicates that the entire circumference of the pipe is welded full. So meaning that will be considered in the weld length. So as I've mentioned earlier, you need to see the clause in chapter 9 in which the acceptance criteria or the threshold for any indications to be considered a defect is indicated. So for letter A, the length of an indication is 10 mm. Individual indication is 10 mm. This does not exceed the 25 mm limit here. So that can be considered as an acceptable indication. So letter A is acceptable. For letter B, the aggregate length is 15 mm if the pipe is fully welded. So the 15 mm definitely didn't exceed the criteria in letter A. And since the pipe is 168.3 mm outside diameter, it qualifies with this one. For any continuous 300 mm length of weld exceeds 1 inch or 25 mm. So the aggregate length here, or the aggregate length of the indication, definitely did not exceed this one as well. And the aggregate length of indications of IF exceeds 8% of the weld length in any weld less than 12 inch or 300 millimeter in length. So this does not qualify with the criteria because the length of the weld here is, if you multiply 168.3 times pi, or if you get the circumference of the pipe, this is greater than the 300 mm. So letter B should be an acceptable criteria because it passed letter A. For letter C, there are two indications, 30 mm and 15 mm. So as you can see here, the length of an individual indication exceeds 25 mm. So definitely the pipe has an incomplete fusion of 30 mm. The pipe has an individual indication with a length of 30 mm. So definitely it didn't pass in this criteria. So the answer now will be letter E. Both A and B are considered acceptable still because it passed the criteria of as stated in the incomplete fusion in API 1104. The condition that exists when one edge of the root is exposed or unbounded because an adjacent pipe or fitting is misaligned. Letter A, inadequate cross penetration or ICP. B, inadequate penetration due to high-low or IPD. Incomplete fusion or IF. Letter D, indication. Letter E, crack. So the question pertains to the definition of this discontinuity. So if you're not familiar with the definition, I highly suggest you get familiar with the definitions in Chapter 3 of API 1104. And if you want to make sure, during the exam, you can always browse this Chapter 3 of the standard. So it has all the definitions of all these discontinuities. So the discontinuity that fits this definition is letter B. So inadequate penetration due to high-low. By the way, inadequate penetration due to misalignment, that's what high-low means here for pipe misalignment.
there's a high-low misalignment, then the tendency of that is that the root may become exposed since we have a high-low misalignment. So it may become exposed or unbonded because of the said misalignment between the pipes. So the answer here is letter B, inadequate penetration due to high-low IPD. A subsurface lack of bond imperfection between the first inside pass and the first outside pass. So what do you call this one? Inadequate cross penetration or ICP. Letter B, inadequate penetration due to high-low IPD. Letter C, incomplete fusion or IF. Letter D, incomplete fusion due to cold lap. Letter E, porosity. So similar to the previous question, this can be found in the glossary, but I highly suggest you become familiar with the terminologies for the exam. So the discontinuity that fits this is inadequate cross penetration. So there is a subsurface lack of bond imperfection between the first inside pass and the first outside pass. This is the inside pass or the root pass and the outside pass here. So there's some sort of a imperfection between that is characterized by lack of bonding between the two. So this can be seen, this subsurface discontinuities can be seen effectively through radiographic testing. So the answer here is letter A, inadequate cross penetration or ICP. These are indications with their greatest dimension across the weld. So this question pertains to what they call these types of indication in terms of how it appears to the weld. So letter A, volumetric indication. Letter B, defect. Letter C, transverse indication. Letter D, discontinuity. Letter E, none of the above. So even though you don't need actually to browse the glossary if you're familiar with this terminology, actually you can manage to, by process of elimination, you can eliminate letter B immediately because an indication is not a defect. A discontinuity is an abrupt interruption in the mechanical or in the structure of the mechanical or metallurgical property of the weld. So it leaves with the three choices already. So volumetric indication is a 3D or a three-dimensional indication of that will be manifested in the weld, and if it is across the weld, then it is transverse indication. So the answer there will be letter C. So if you check chapter 3 of the glossary or chapter 3 of API 1104, which is the glossary, so it indicates the greatest dimension across the weld. So if you have a weld right here, so you have an indication like that. So that is a transverse indication. So the answer here is letter C. These are indications which are three-dimensional. So I've kind of preempted this question earlier. So letter A, volumetric indication. Letter B, defect. Letter C, transverse indication. Letter D, discontinuity. Letter E, none of the above. So a volumetric indication is an indication that is three-dimensional. So these volumetric indications can only be detected through radiographic inspection or ultrasonic testing. So the answer here is letter A. Volumetric indications are those indications that are three-dimensional. For this question, these are indications with their greatest dimension in the weld direction. So letter A, volumetric indication. Letter B, defect. Letter C, transverse indication. Letter D, linear indication. Letter E, none of the above. So if the greatest indication in the weld is like this, in parallel with the direction of the weld, then it is called a linear indication. So the answer here is letter D. If the indication runs along the weld direction. Linear surface indications other than cracks interpreted to be open to the ID or OD surface shall be considered defects if letter A, maximum dimension of 13 mm. Letter B, aggregate length of 100 mm in a 300 mm continuous weld length. Letter C, maximum total length of 3 mm. Letter D, A and C. Letter E, all of the above. So you have to look for the acceptance criteria of ultrasonic testing if you to find this linear surface indications because for the other questions that I've mentioned earlier or in my previous videos, so it is under the acceptance criteria of radiographic testing. So for LS indications or linear surface indication, it is under UT. So in the question, if you look back at it, so it refers other than cracks because cracks are automatically under many standards, if not all, is automatically considered defects. So if you can see this clause, which is found in the acceptance criteria for UT, as I've mentioned, you can see the applicable clauses here. Letter A, the aggregate length of LS indications in any continuous 300 mm length of weld exceeds 25 mm. So here, it corresponds to letter B. So it mentioned here aggregate length of 100 mm. So it will be considered a defect since it exceeded the 25 mm threshold. So for this clause, the aggregate length of LS indication exceeds 8% of the weld length. So the maximum total for letter C, the maximum total length of 3 mm. So it doesn't say here in the clauses that the maximum total length of the weld should be 3 mm. The maximum total length should be or shall be 3 mm. So it doesn't say like that. So here it can be considered a defect because letter B can be considered a defect because it exceeded the 25 mm limit of the aggregate length as mentioned here. So the aggregate length is more than the 25 mm limit as stated here in this clause. So the answer here is letter B. Which of the following statement is false? So this kind of questions, if it appeared in the part C of the CWI exam, if you chosen API 1104, is kind of this the toughest because you have to find the clauses that corresponds to these statements. So you have to check in the standard where you can find these. One technique or one bit of clue that you can deduce from all of this is that you need to find a commonality between the choices. So if I can read it first. So when IC is detected by visual examination, any length of IC shall be considered a defect if the concavity is greater than the cap height at the same location relative to the length of the weld. Letter B, internal concavity is a root bead that is fused to and that completely penetrates the pipe wall thickness along both sides of the bevel, but whose center is below the inside surface of the pipe wall. Letter C, internal concavity shall be considered a defect when a portion of the area is thinner than the thinnest adjacent parent material. Letter D, A and B. Letter E, none of the above. So the commonality that I'm talking about here is the internal concavity. So this question talks about internal concavity. Now, if the question is not talking about the same thing altogether, that where it becomes more difficult because it's time consuming to check with the clauses, not unless you're familiar at heart. So that the reading beforehand or the preparation beforehand will help you become more familiar where to find those clauses, and having those sticky notes at hand or having those sticky notes in those clauses, in those relevant or important clauses will help you tackle or finish the exam in a fast will help you finish or complete the exam quicker, and you will not suffer from cramming at the end of the exam because of time pressure. So as you can see here, letter A corresponds to the visual acceptance of IC discontinuity. So when IC is detected by visual examination, any length shall be considered a defect should the depth of the concavity be greater than the cap height at the same location relative to the length of the weld. So that is the acceptance criteria in terms of visual examination of IC. So it is correct. So remember, we're finding the false statement here. Letter B here is the spot-on definition, or this clause is the spot-on definition as stated in letter B for internal concavity. So the root bead that is fused and that completely penetrates the pipe wall thickness along both sides of the bevel. So this is the spot-on definition from the glossary for internal concavity. So for letter C, so it is not the definition, or it doesn't pertain to internal concavity but of burn through. So you have to basically, if you can do the process of elimination, this will not pertain to internal concavity if you're familiar with burn through. But if you want to check, so you have to look into different clauses of API 1104. So the answer here is letter C.